The galaxy had always been a vast, intricate web of power struggles, ancient alliances, and competing interests, with each species carving out its own niche among the stars. But everything changed when a strange transmission disrupted the usual hum of communication. The message, simple but cryptic, echoed across every corner of known space, sending waves of shock through the galactic community. Humanity is armed and ready. This is your last warning. It wasn't much, but it was enough to rattle the most powerful empires and ancient species alike. No one knew where it had come from or who had sent it. The only certainty was that the source was well beyond the reach of the Galactic Authority, coming from an uncharted system at the very edge of the known universe. This message, cold, clear, and unyielding, didn't make sense at first. Humanity, a species once on the brink of destruction, still rebuilding itself after centuries of internal conflict and war, was suddenly issuing a warning. The alien species that had long since deemed Earth insignificant couldn't understand how something so primitive could possibly pose a threat. For decades, the United Earth Federation, UEF, had been expanding, slowly but steadily, but their influence was still regarded with cautious skepticism by the galaxy's more advanced civilizations. The fear, however, was palpable. There was something in the tone of the message, something unspoken yet undeniable, that struck a chord. Soon, the galaxy's various factions, each with their own histories and ambitions, began to react. The towering Tularan Empire, masters of deep space technology, sent their most experienced scouts to investigate, while the sleek Sorvans, known for their cunning and espionage, used every trick at their disposal to gather intelligence. The mighty Valkera, a warrior race that had dominated for centuries, laughed at the audacity of the humans, but even they began preparing, sending their fleets into high alert. The message had ignited a spark of doubt, and in this galaxy, doubt was dangerous. Back on Earth, the UES top officials were far from laughing. As the message reached them, they gathered in hushed, tense meetings, their minds racing with possibilities. For years, humanity had quietly rebuilt, strengthening its hold over Earth's colonies, advancing its technology, and slowly asserting its presence on the galactic stage. But this was something new, something unexpected. The message, despite its simplicity, seemed like more than just a warning. It felt like a challenge, a declaration of intent. High-ranking officials and military strategists, such as Admiral Leona Knight, who had earned her reputation through years of tactical brilliance, were already drawing up contingency plans. The message's very existence was a reminder that humanity had become a power to be reckoned with, and they had not only survived but thrived against impossible odds. The UEF had advanced far beyond the wildest dreams of their ancestors. Their ships, once nothing more than crude vessels built for exploration, now boasted cutting-edge weapons systems and defenses. The Vanguard fleet, a force of sleek, high-tech warships, stood ready for whatever might come their way. But it wasn't just their military might that had earned humanity respect. It was their unpredictability, their ability to turn the tides of battle with sheer ingenuity. If humanity had made it this far, there was something more to them than any alien species had anticipated. Across the galaxy, the response to the warning was divided. Some believed it to be a bluff, just the desperate cry of a species far out of its depth. Others, however, feared the worst. The question that hung in the air was no longer what humanity had meant by the message, but what they had become. For centuries, Earth had been seen as little more than a blip in the grand cosmic scale. Now that blip had turned into a beacon of unknown power and potential. The leaders of the galaxy's most powerful factions were now faced with an uncomfortable truth. They had to decide whether humanity was a threat to be eliminated, an ally to be courted, or a force that would reshape everything they knew. And as the UEF prepared for the unknown, the galaxy could only wait. No one could be sure who would make the first move or what the future held, but one thing was certain: the warning had been heard. Humanity had spoken, and in doing so, they had turned the tide of history. The question was no longer whether humanity would rise. It was how far they were willing to go to prove their place in the stars. In the span of a few short centuries, humanity had transformed in ways unimaginable to the rest of the galaxy. Once an isolated, war-torn planet on the fringe of the cosmos, Earth had grown into a powerful force, shaping the future of space with a mix of sheer determination, innovation, and a relentless will to survive. No longer were humans just a fleeting memory of a failed species. They had become a formidable empire, holding sway over vast territories, with colonies scattered across the stars. The United Earth Federation, UEF, was a symbol of strength, its influence extending beyond the cradle of humanity into the furthest reaches of space. What once seemed impossible for Earth was now a reality. Humanity controlled some of the most advanced technologies ever seen in the galaxy. Their warships, known as the Vanguard, were colossal, nearly invulnerable to any known weapon, and capable of devastating entire fleets with a single strike. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, a perfect blend of firepower, speed, and precision. The Vanguard was not just a symbol of humanity's military might. It was a reminder to the galaxy that Earth's power should never again be underestimated. But despite this overwhelming strength, Earth had never forgotten the struggles of its past. The scars of war, both internal and external, had left deep marks on the human spirit. Even as they stood at the precipice of a new age, the people of Earth understood the dangers of complacency. This was why, when the cryptic message, "Humanity is armed and ready. This is your last warning," had reverberated across the stars, the UEF had responded not with arrogance, but with calculated caution. They knew that power alone would not be enough to protect them. It was time to find out who dared to threaten them. The task of uncovering the source of the warning fell to one of Earth's brightest and most respected military minds, Admiral Leona Knight. Known for her strategic brilliance and unshakable resolve, Knight had led humanity's forces through some of their most decisive victories. With the Vanguard fleet at her command, there was little doubt that she could face any challenge. However, this was different. This was not just another military campaign. The message from the unknown source hinted at something far larger, something far more dangerous. Knight understood that the galaxy was vast, and the unknowns far greater than anything they had encountered before. As she stood at the helm of the UES flagship, the Titan, gazing at the star-streaked expanse before her, the weight of her mission settled over her like a heavy cloak. She was not only the leader of an army, she was humanity's final line of defense against an enemy that could very well be beyond their understanding. Her mission was clear: track down the source of the message, uncover who or what was threatening humanity, and eliminate the threat before it could escalate into something far worse. But as the Titan and the rest of the Vanguard fleet sailed deeper into the unexplored regions of space, Knight couldn't help but feel the unease that clung to her. The galaxy had long regarded humanity as a fledgling species, new to the stars, still naive in the grand scheme of things. But now, humanity's name was being spoken in whispers, and those whispers carried an edge of fear. The message had rattled the core of galactic politics, and the more Knight thought about it, the more she understood just how little they knew about the true extent of their enemies. With every passing day, the Vanguard fleet pushed deeper into the unknown, but the silence was deafening. No sign of the enemy, no trace of the transmission's origin. Yet the tension was building, both within the UEF and across the galaxy. Knight knew that the longer they went without answers, the more dangerous the unknown became. There were factions within the galaxy that might view humanity's rise as a threat to their power, and in a galaxy where alliances shifted like sand, enemies could be made without warning. As the days turned into weeks, the crew aboard the Titan prepared for every possibility. Knight's cold, calculating nature was a perfect match for the uncertainty of their mission. Every sensor sweep, every scan of the dark reaches of space, brought them no closer to the truth. But one thing became clearer with each passing moment. Whoever had sent that message had been watching. They had been waiting, and they knew humanity far better than anyone had realized. Admiral Knight tightened her grip on the command chair, her mind racing. This wasn't just about military superiority. It was a matter of survival. Whatever threat lay ahead, humanity's rise had only just begun, and the galaxy was about to see just how far they would go to protect their future. The question remained, was humanity's greatest strength their weapons, or the will that had brought them this far? As Admiral Leona Knight's fleet ventured deeper into the uncharted region of space, the feeling of uncertainty only grew stronger. The dark expanse of the unknown seemed to stretch endlessly before them, with no clear sign of where the mysterious message had originated. But the moment they crossed into a vast sector of space that had remained unexplored for millennia, the silence was broken. The scanners on the Titan picked up an enormous fleet, one unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. A massive armada of warships, far larger and more imposing than anything in Earth's arsenal, emerged from the shadows of space. It was the Arcteri, a race older than most civilizations in the galaxy, and known for their brutal conquests and overwhelming technological superiority. For eons, the Arcteri had been the undisputed masters of space, laying waste to anyone who dared oppose them. Their ships were massive, their weapons devastating, and their technology so advanced that it seemed to border on the edge of the impossible. The galaxy had long whispered of their cruelty and strength, and now they were standing face to face with humanity. At first, the Arcteri were dismissive. Earth was nothing more than a small, young species that had barely begun to touch the stars. They had heard of the human threat only as a passing rumor, but now it seemed that the rumors had been true. However, the Arcteri's leaders believed this was nothing more than a fluke, a small fleet from a species that had no real understanding of war on the scale of galactic empires. With their fleet lined up and their weapons primed, the Arcteri's generals expected an easy victory. They would crush the humans and send a message to anyone who thought they could challenge their dominance. But Admiral Knight was no stranger to underestimating her enemies. She knew that humanity's strength lay not in the size of their ships, but in their speed, their adaptability, and most of all, their ingenuity. While the Arcteri were accustomed to overwhelming force, humanity had learned to fight smart. The Vanguard fleet, though smaller, was nimble, agile, and equipped with advanced technology that was years ahead of anything the Arcteri possessed. Knight knew that if they were to survive this encounter, they would need to use every advantage at their disposal. The first clash between the two forces was nothing short of explosive. The Arcteri fired first, their massive warships unleashing a barrage of energy beams that tore through space with destructive force. The sheer power of the Arcteri's weaponry would have shattered any other fleet, but the humans were prepared. The Vanguard fleet swiftly maneuvered through the barrage, their advanced shields absorbing the blasts, while their smaller, more agile ships danced between the Arcteri vessels like shadows, impossible to target. The Arcteri were used to facing slower, less coordinated fleets, but this was something different. The humans were everywhere at once, striking with precision and retreating before the enemy could even react. Admiral Knight, Ever the strategist unleashed her trump card. A new weapon, still in its experimental stages, was deployed. A device that had the potential to change the course of the battle. The Nova Pulse was humanity's answer to the overwhelming power of the Arcturi. It was a weapon that harnessed the energy of a dying star, focusing it into a single devastating burst. The moment the Nova Pulse was activated, the entire battlefield seemed to shudder as the weapon discharged. The massive shockwave of energy ripped through space, causing a blinding explosion that temporarily consumed the Arcturi flagship. The blast was so powerful that it sent shockwaves through the entire enemy fleet, leaving the Arcturi stunned and disoriented. The damage was catastrophic. The flagship, once the pride of the Arcturi fleet, was left in ruins, its core systems completely crippled. The shock of the attack reverberated across the rest of the Armada, sending ripples of fear through the Arcturi leadership. They had underestimated humanity's resolve and ingenuity, and they paid the price for it. What had started as a seemingly impossible conflict had now become a battle of survival, and the Arcturi realized that they were facing a species unlike any they had encountered before. The battle, though far from over, had already made one thing abundantly clear. Humanity would not back down. Admiral Knight stood on the bridge of the Titan, her expression cold but determined. This was only the beginning. The Arcturi might have been powerful, but humanity's will to survive was far stronger. The first victory had been achieved, but the war was far from won. And the message she hoped to send to the galaxy was clear. Humanity was not to be trifled with. The battle between humanity and the Arcturi raged on, each side pushing their limits as they fought for dominance in the vast expanse of space. The Vanguard fleet, still riding the momentum of their surprising victory, was relentless in its pursuit, striking swiftly and decisively. The Arcturi, once confident in their superiority, were now on the defensive, struggling to adapt to the humans' unpredictable tactics and advanced technology. But amidst the chaos, something darker was stirring. A revelation that would shatter everything humanity thought they knew about their enemies and the galaxy itself. As Admiral Leona Knight strategized her next move, a strange anomaly appeared in the data streams. The Arcturi, though formidable, were only a symptom of a much greater force. Deep within the heart of the conflict, the truth slowly began to surface. This war was not just between humanity and the Arcturi. It was a war orchestrated by something far more ancient and far more dangerous. The mysterious warning message, the very message that had set everything in motion, had not come from the Arcturi at all. The true source of the message was revealed to be something far more insidious, lurking in the shadows of the galaxy, an entity known only as the Overwatch. The Overwatch was a coalition of ancient, godlike beings who had watched over the galaxy for millennia. They were not interested in conquest or the trivial affairs of individual civilizations. They were something far older and more terrifying. For ages, the Overwatch had remained hidden, observing the rise and fall of countless civilizations, maintaining an eerie silence as the galaxy evolved. They had never directly interfered with the affairs of the galaxy's inhabitants, instead choosing to remain in the background, pulling the strings of events from afar. But now, for reasons unknown, they had chosen humanity as the target of their wrath. When the Overwatch revealed themselves to the leaders of the United Earth Federation, the true scale of the threat became clear. These beings were not mere conquerors or warlords. They were cosmic forces that viewed the galaxy as a delicate balance, one that could be thrown into chaos by the unpredictable nature of any species they deemed unworthy. And humanity, with its rapid technological evolution and unyielding drive, had caught their attention. To the Overwatch, humanity's unrelenting progress represented a threat to the very order of the universe. The fact that humans had dared to evolve so quickly, creating technology beyond the scope of other species, was seen as a violation of the natural order. In their eyes, humanity was a destabilizing force, one that must be eradicated before it could upset the balance they had carefully maintained for eons. This revelation hit the UEF like a thunderclap. The Arcteri were nothing more than pawns in a much larger game. Their role in this conflict had been manipulated by the Overwatch, who saw in them a convenient tool to provoke humanity. The Overwatch were not a force that could be reasoned with. They had no interest in diplomacy, no desire for negotiation. Their view of the galaxy was one of cold, calculated control, and they had decided that humanity's existence threatened the cosmic balance they sought to preserve. The UEF, already battered from their clash with the Arcteri, now found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The Overwatch were not bound by the same rules that governed the other civilizations of the galaxy. They were ancient, unfathomably powerful, and their power seemed limitless. The weapons they wielded were beyond human comprehension, and their very presence seemed to warp the fabric of reality itself. There would be no easy victory, no decisive battle where humanity could claim triumph. The Overwatch did not wage war in the traditional sense. They were more like a natural force, one that could not be reasoned with or defeated by mere weapons. Humanity's future hung in the balance. The Overwatch had made their intentions clear. They would stop at nothing to wipe out humanity and any other species they deemed a threat. The UEF, once confident in their technological superiority, now faced an enemy that defied all logic, all reason. Admiral Knight and her fleet stood at the precipice of an impossible war, one that would test humanity's very survival. The galaxy, once a vast and mysterious place, now seemed like a fragile illusion, with the Overwatch waiting in the wings, ready to rewrite the rules of existence itself. With the stakes higher than ever, humanity would have to dig deeper than they ever had before, because only by uniting in the face of this terrifying, cosmic power could they hope to survive. The Overwatch wasted no time in making their intentions clear. Within days of revealing their existence, they initiated their first strike against humanity. This was not a conventional assault. No fleets of warships or armies of soldiers appeared in the sky. Instead, the Overwatch sent their most terrifying creations, autonomous war machines that were as much alive as they were mechanical. These biomechanical monstrosities were not just tools of war. They were living weapons, capable of adapting to any attack humanity could throw at them. Each war machine was a marvel of horrific design, with self-healing abilities and a seemingly infinite arsenal of devastating weapons. They were designed to learn, to evolve with every battle, making them nearly impossible to defeat. The very nature of these creatures made them a nightmare for the human forces. But humanity's response was immediate and unyielding. Earth's defenders would not bow to this cold mechanical force. The UES ground forces, equipped with the most advanced exosuits ever developed, took to the front lines. These exosuits were the pinnacle of human ingenuity, allowing soldiers to wield devastating firepower and move with incredible agility, even in the face of overwhelming odds. On Earth's surface, entire cities were transformed into battlegrounds as the invaders' biomechanical legions tore through buildings, leaving destruction in their wake. The UES laser-based artillery fired relentlessly, but no matter what humanity threw at the Overwatch's war machines, they adapted, becoming even more lethal with every engagement. It seemed like an endless struggle, as if the invaders were always one step ahead. Admiral Knight, watching the chaos unfold from the command deck of the Titan, knew that humanity's survival was at stake. This wasn't just a battle for Earth, It was a battle for everything humanity had worked so hard to build. The Overwatch didn't just want to conquer Earth, they wanted to extinguish humanity's very existence, to erase them from the fabric of the galaxy. There would be no diplomacy, no ceasefire. Knight's heart burned with the knowledge that this was the fight of a lifetime, and she would not let her people fall. But as the battle raged, a glimmer of hope emerged. A breakthrough came in the form of a covert operation led by the best and brightest of humanity's elite forces. A small strike team, consisting of humans and allied alien soldiers who had joined the UEF after witnessing humanity's resolve, was tasked with infiltrating one of the Overwatch's massive flagships. It was a dangerous mission, one that seemed impossible, but it was humanity's last shot at discovering a weakness in the Overwatch's relentless war machine. The team infiltrated the flagship undetected, using every stealth tactic at their disposal to avoid the all-seeing sensors of the Overwatch. Once inside, they uncovered a chilling truth. There was a central intelligence that controlled the war machines, an entity whose neural network was linked directly to every one of the biomechanical soldiers. In a hidden chamber deep within the heart of the flagship, the team found the core of this intelligence, a sentient network that acted as the mind behind the machines. The soldiers they had been fighting were not mindless killers. They were extensions of this entity, responding to its commands with cold, mechanical precision. But the most shocking discovery of all was that the entity was vulnerable. There was a specific frequency, a high-frequency signal, that could disrupt its neural network and sever the link between the war machines and their central control. But there was a catch. Only humans could generate this frequency. The unique physiology of human vocal cords, combined with a certain resonance in their bone structure, allowed them to emit the precise frequency needed to break the connection. This revelation was a game-changer. Admiral Knight wasted no time. The UEF mobilized its forces, launching a daring counterattack. The next phase of humanity's plan was set into motion. The strategy was simple, yet incredibly risky. A small team of humans, using advanced technology to amplify their natural frequency, would target the central hub of the Overwatch's flagship. If successful, they would sever the connection, rendering the war machines useless. But it was a long shot. The Overwatch were watching, and they would stop at nothing to prevent humanity from succeeding. As the final assault began, the Vanguard fleet launched a full-scale attack on the Overwatch flagship, drawing the attention of the war machines. Meanwhile, the strike team on the ground prepared to infiltrate the flagship and deliver the frequency. The fate of humanity rested on a razor's edge. One misstep, one failure, and everything could be lost. The battle for survival had taken a new turn, and now humanity's future depended on an unthinkable plan, a plan that only they could carry out. The question remained, would it be enough to turn the tide, or would the Overwatch prove to be a force too powerful to defeat? As the Overwatch's forces closed in on Earth, the UES' desperate gamble became humanity's last hope. The broadcast of the unique frequency had begun, a signal that could potentially disrupt the mind-bending control the Overwatch had over their war machines. The frequency was humanity's secret weapon, a discovery that had emerged from the very core of their struggle. It was their only chance, and the stakes could not have been higher. If the signal failed, Earth's entire existence would be wiped from the galaxy's map, a casualty of the Overwatch's cold, inevitable design. The battle outside Earth's atmosphere raged on as the fleet fought valiantly against the relentless tide of biomechanical monsters. Every moment felt like an eternity, with each passing minute bringing them closer to either salvation or extinction. The risk of broadcasting the frequency was astronomical, but there was no other choice. Admiral Knight, standing resolute in the command center, watched as the signal began to pulse across the galaxy. It was a fleeting hope, but it was hope nonetheless. The entire fleet was engaged in a furious defense, but there was a growing sense that the tide of battle was slowly starting to shift. The Overwatch war machines, which had once been so terrifyingly unstoppable, began to falter. At first, it was subtle, small glitches in their movements, weapons misfiring, and some machines even losing their coordination. Then it became more pronounced. Entire battalions of Overwatch soldiers stumbled, their actions growing erratic and disorganized. The disruption was real. The signal was working. The human fleet, emboldened by this sudden change, seized the moment. The Vanguard fleet, alongside their alien allies who had joined the fight out of respect for humanity's resilience, launched a full-scale offensive. It was a sight to behold, fighters and warships streaking across the dark expanse of space, firing on all cylinders. The Overwatch's once imposing armada was now vulnerable, its war machines no longer working in perfect synchrony. Earth's forces and their allies pummeled the invaders from all sides, forcing the Overwatch back. Victory was within reach, and the first flickers of hope began to rise on Earth's surface. But just as the humans thought they might have turned the tide, the Overwatch revealed their final weapon. In the heart of their fleet, nestled behind layers of seemingly impenetrable shields, they activated a terrifying construct, a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems. It was an artificial sun, a colossal sphere of energy that could unleash the destructive power of a star collapsing into itself. The sheer scale of it was unimaginable. In an instant, the artificial sun began to glow, radiating a heat that could sear entire planets to ashes. It was a last-ditch effort, a doomsday device meant to wipe Earth and everything in its path from existence. The moment it activated, the very fabric of space seemed to warp under the pressure. The Overwatch was not just fighting for victory now. They were fighting to destroy everything humanity had fought for. The threat was too great to ignore. If the artificial sun was allowed to reach full power, it would obliterate Earth, as well as any nearby star systems. Earth's remaining forces could not afford to falter. With the Overwatch scrambling to retain control of their weapon, Admiral Knight made the call. She ordered every ship in the fleet to converge on the artificial sun, rallying every last ounce of strength and willpower to stop it. The UES fleet, still battered from the ongoing battle, surged forward with one final, unified purpose. The Overwatch's flagship, protected by layers of energy shields, was the key to stopping the weapon. They needed to disable the shields, or there would be no stopping the sun's destructive power. A fierce space battle erupted around the weapon, with ships darting in and out of the artificial sun's blinding light. The pressure was suffocating, and the air was thick with tension. Every moment brought them closer to either salvation or annihilation. In the chaos, a daring team of soldiers, led by some of the UES finest, made a suicide mission to board the Overwatch flagship. Their goal, to plant an explosive device that would disable the weapon's shields and give humanity a fighting chance. But with every passing second, the artificial sun grew brighter, its energy building towards an unimaginable peak. There was no more room for error. Admiral Knight's voice crackled through the comms, a beacon of unwavering resolve. "This is humanity's last stand," she said. "We fight until the end." With that, the final wave of human fighters made their desperate push. The battle for Earth had reached its climax. The fate of the galaxy, and of humanity itself, now rested on the shoulders of the brave few who dared to face the impossible. In the final, desperate moments of the battle, humanity's combined forces launched a heroic push that defied all odds. The artificial sun, a weapon of unimaginable destruction, loomed over Earth and the galaxy like an impending doom. Its energy pulsed, threatening to reach critical mass and wipe out everything in its path. Time was running out, and every second counted. But humanity, with its indomitable will to survive, refused to surrender. Ships darted through the blistering light of the sun, risking everything to disable its core. The battle was fierce, with human and alien forces working together in a unity they had never shared before. The stakes had never been higher. With a final, desperate strike, the UEF and their allies succeeded in planting the explosives that would destroy the artificial sun. The resulting explosion sent shockwaves through space, and the weapon's immense power dissipated in a flash of light. Earth was saved. The Overwatch's grand design had been shattered, their plans thwarted. But the victory was bittersweet. Earth's forces, battered and broken from the grueling battle, had paid an immense price. The war had taken its toll, lives lost, fleets destroyed, and entire cities reduced to rubble. The cost of survival was steep, and though humanity had prevailed, the scars of the conflict would remain for generations. The galaxy, too, was left in a state of chaos. The Overwatch had been a shadow over every civilization, and their sudden downfall left a vacuum that would take time to fill. Without the Overwatch's control, the delicate balance of power between the various factions in the galaxy was in disarray. Yet despite the uncertainty, one thing was clear: humanity had sent an unmistakable message. We are armed, we are ready, and we will fight for our future. In the aftermath of the battle, the alliances between alien species that had once been fractured began to solidify. Species who had watched humanity from afar, unsure of their place in the galaxy, now saw them in a new light. They recognized the potential in humanity, the raw determination that had turned the tide in the face of overwhelming odds. No longer just a primitive species struggling to survive, Earth's people had shown themselves to be a force of nature, unstoppable when they stood together. Alien races that had once viewed humanity with skepticism or even disdain began to reach out, offering their support in the rebuilding efforts. The UEF, now stronger and more united than ever, found itself at the center of this new era of cooperation. Humanity's victory had not just saved Earth, it had reshaped the galaxy's balance of power. The UEF, bolstered by the alliances forged in the heat of battle, became the new beacon of hope for all those who sought peace and stability. The once fractured galaxy now had a force capable of standing firm against any future threats. Earth had become more than just a planet. Its people had become leaders, defenders, and symbol of unity in the face of destruction. As the dust settled and the reconstruction began, it was clear that the age of humanity's dominance had only just begun. The UEF wasn't just a military power. It was the beginning of a new era for the galaxy. A new coalition was formed, one that would work tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost, defend against any future threats, and guide the galaxy towards a future of cooperation and stability. The message that humanity had sent was undeniable. They would never be pushed aside again. The universe had learned that the people of Earth, though once small and divided, had the strength to rise to any challenge. And as the UEF forged its path forward, no force in the galaxy, would ever be able to stand in humanity's way again. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's last stand, and now it would bear witness to the rise of a new era. A golden age led by those who refused to be broken, who had fought for their future and won.